Okay, so the next part is sort of like a mixture of Q&A and brainstorming, and I was thinking that maybe we could set up a couple of seats up here, one for Elizabeth, one for Meg, and then Josh Hetzler, who is going to oversee this process. Josh is legislative counsel with the Family Foundation, and he's a member of the Virginia State Bar, graduate of Liberty University School of Law. He speaks all over the state in support, on behalf of the Family Foundation, in support of life and family values. So, Josh, why don't you come up and why don't we welcome Josh?
Let me make a few general comments, as certainly sit up there, and I'll bring this over in a moment. I wanted to just tell you all, it's obvious already, but these two ladies, you don't know how grateful I am personally, the Family Foundation is for them. I've seen them in action, and they are both a force to be reckoned with. And it goes to show you, and Elizabeth in particular, I've seen her on the Fairfax School Board holding her ground when she may be the only one of a 12-member board. And 1 out of 12, it's amazing. It really matters, right? Because it's the difference between people knowing that there's another side of it and then having to answer for it. And having a lot of parents, probably at least half, I would imagine, if they knew it was going to, they agree with Elizabeth, so they have a voice, right? So it's hugely important, and it's really amazing to think about how much power a school board member has. So it cannot be underestimated, because of course we're talking about our children, and how they're being molded and what they're hearing and being taught. And Meg has just been the perfect example of all you could ever want in an active parent, and they have done a lot of the legwork that is being used elsewhere, and I think we'll draw from tonight. Real quick, I wanted to, before I forget, make a plug for this. There's some of these, the Family Foundation puts out these, I should say the Family Foundation Action, which is a sister organization, and we put out these report cards, and every 2 years, a lot of good information about all 140 members of the legislature. I've got some with me tonight. You take as many as you like. Get them out everywhere to your churches. And we're also going to have voter guides for all of the races in the General Assembly. We're finalizing them, and we're going to get them out several weeks before the election in churches all over. And we've had a Prince William and Stafford regional guide, so that people know who to vote for. So make sure you come see me about that, or you can go to our website and order them. And I did just want to, for my part, before we get into this, give it a brief overview of how the family life education works from a legal standpoint and some of what's happening at the state level to address this. Because Elizabeth was largely right when she said it's school board, school board, school board. That's true, but there is a role for the state legislature to play, and they are, it is always a battle. Family life education has always been a battle, but it has become much more so, particularly after 2015, when, as was mentioned earlier tonight, the Supreme Court, in 2015, it wasn't that long ago, imposed a new definition of marriage upon everyone, and it shifted the cultural conversation and norm in a seismic way, right? So, and now in the past 2 years in particular, we've seen transgender ideology really be a force. So in recent, this really has become a battleground like no other. in the state legislature, two of the main things we're trying to do and are seeing some movement on. This past year, we were able to pass through the House, didn't make it through the Senate, but a bill that would change FLE from opt-out to opt-in. So the presumption is that your child's not going to have it unless you want them to be. Well, our goal really is not to cause students not to take family life education. We really feel that that's up to the parents, right? But we want to incentivize parents to look at what it is and to know and to not be caught off guard when maybe their student didn't bring home the form. They didn't even know about it. This happens all the time. Our system now isn't good for parents, right? So in theory, all 100% of parents can put their kids in it, that's fine, and they can theoretically teach whatever they want. But we want to make sure that parents have every opportunity to know and be informed, make an informed decision about, especially in light of how much this is changing and how much you get to talk about a lot of what happened in Fairfax on family life education and some of the ways that it went down and sort of it's called FLECAC. What's that acronym?
Family Life Education Curriculum Advisory Committee.
Yes, so
where the student representative that can't vote on the school board appoints four student members to FLECAC, one per grade by high school, to my one. So the unvoting member that is a child who is a minor by state law is appointing four peer children to the Family Life Advisory Committee for the curriculum and to outweigh every school board member's one. That's the type of thing when I say, and we have every ability to direct the superintendent to reorder the FLECAC and how it's comprised, and to maybe have one person from every major ethnic culture, every major religion, but our board of course doesn't, because to them it's very natural that the children would have 4 times the voice of any one elected official.
yeah, so
That's an example.
I would say you need to find out if you have a FLECAC in Prince William County. You may not even have one, and by law you're supposed to have one. There's supposed to be a committee of people who are commenting on the curriculum that's being developed.
That is not led by staff, but led by
the community.
community.
And my guess would be that you probably don't have one, and if you do, it's pretty weak.
right, so changes are being made all the time.
Sure.
And they're changing in every locality. All 138 or so can have their own family life education curriculum. Every one of them can be different. Now, according to state law, there has to be certain things that are minimum, and those are laid out in the code. And then from there, the State Board of Education gives guidelines, and they give a whole bunch of options that they think are fine that meet the legal standards. And you can have anything from total emphasis on abstinence education to the absent spectrum, and a school district doesn't have to do family life education. They don't. Most people don't realize that. But if they do choose to do it, they've got to meet these standards. But they have a lot of leeway within that, and that's where parents in the community can actually have make a real difference in this area, more so than other things. I don't think I even realized that by law you have to have like a FLECAC committee.
It's in the code.
Yeah, it's in the state code. And I will also say, this is, with regard to FLE or anything else, if you want your child to participate in chorus, you have to have a permission slip. If you want your child to participate in band, you have to sign a permission slip. If you want your child to be able to take an aspirin or an EpiPen, you have to have a permission slip plus a doctor's note. If they're going to go on a field trip, to Jamestown, it's a permission slip. Everything is an affirmative acknowledgement on behalf of the parents that I choose for my child, and not only that, there's partitions within a permission slip about they can fully participate or they can participate but not in this part. And so everything is an informed consent on the part of parents except family life. And the further, and I do want to say about the porn, because it's the degree to which school districts, and FCPS is again at the front end of experimenting with children. The Wall Street Journal 2 weeks ago just issued a major article, and I don't usually listen to Wall Street Journal, but sometimes they'll hit one out of the park, about how school districts across the country who've invested mass amounts of money, your money, into technology and education are now scrapping it. And if you think about what children can be exposed to on the internet, who's creating the content that is in this curriculum, who's informing them, is Al Jazeera their main, source of social studies, topics, for going and confirming, studies? I'm not making that up. That has come to us. If we're issuing minor children, a government-issued computer that directs what websites they can and cannot go to, thus delimiting their sources of information, and oh, by the way, using sites like Google and YouTube on those government-issued computers to minor children. And Google has been fined billions of dollars for invasion of privacy, not only of adults, but YouTube specifically, hundreds of millions of dollars for violation of children's privacy rights. We're now issuing and compelling in compulsory education the use of a computer, charging the family that's supposed to be getting a free and appropriate education, charging the family for the use of the computer, mandating its use, and then who's creating the content? Silicon Valley, joint venture capitalists who are looking to embed their content into education dollars, and then the children access it through a what? A Google account that's made for minor age children. They then source and address all of this digital content through their Google account, and by law, this is a new one for you, by law, parents are not allowed to access the Google account of their child because the student has proprietary rights to their own work. Talk about separating parents from what their children are learning.
Is that federal law? Is it federal statute or
I
something? What
don't
is
know.
it?
Go get them, Josh.
Well, I mean, I have all my kids' passwords, right? And I go on their account, whether I'm supposed to or not. Because I know what's in my parent view, which is nothing, right? All the good stuff is on my kid's computer. And so that has to be monitored pretty closely.
But what this ends up doing is actually, whether it's FLE content or history curriculum or English curriculum or anything else, the people who wind up most disadvantaged are actually poor, non-English speaking parents. We have students in Fairfax County who speak 200 different languages and dialects. Do you think that the parents who are immigrants to this country, who may have a certain ethnic or cultural or religious set of values, that they're able to access the content that's difficult for my husband and I to navigate as easily? Are they as aware of what's going on and able to help their children learn, help them to discern what they're learning within the context of their values, of their religion, of their upbringing, and discern, you know what, just because that website says that maybe not, I may need multiple sources. If the parents don't even understand what their children are learning.
Doesn't do all that stuff.
What's that?
What she's talking about doing this, you're really protected under the First Amendment. It's an
Oh,
open book.
no, I'm telling you, as a school board member, I am bullied. I am bullied mercilessly as a school board member, and I'm an adult who can stand up for myself. If you are a 9th grader in biology who is a Muslim girl, or a 10th grader in a history class who, has great-grandparents who were part of the Holocaust. Do you think that you have the ability to stand up there and say no to a teacher, or say that's not right that you're teaching me that, or that you're delimiting my ability to offer my side of it? The school boards are not demanding both sides of an issue be presented to them to make fair, informed, stewardship-minded, reasonable decisions on your behalf. Why would minor children be able to advocate any better for themselves in a classroom with peer pressure, teacher pressure, administrative pressure, all driven by a school board that is not on your side?
And
Sorry.
really shouldn't be relying upon the students to look out for their own interests. That's what parents are for.
Exactly.
And I want to follow up on this overall point that Elizabeth made. In Prince William County, I looked at the curriculum here. Prince William actually has a little bit better, more transparency, and they put more things online than a lot of other places. So it's decent. But I noticed that, and they actually provide the objectives for family life education in 4 languages other than English, including Spanish, Arabic, Vietnamese, and Urdu. But what I found was that they only do it for grades K through 5. So, and that's only the objectives of what the family life education is. That doesn't include the actual content. So, a parent, now, the K through 5 is the things that are not as objectionable, right? So, and I'm going to bring this easel over in a second, but what we got to think about, one of the things somebody should do is follow up with them and say, hey, you've got all these parents, enough of them that you think it's important to put in their language, and that's good. But you haven't given them the most controversial stuff. You only did K through 5. I don't think that Manassas does any other languages other than English. By the way, both Manassas and Prince William have a K through 10. And I think it's a little bit unusual for school boards to start doing family life in kindergarten. I mean, my experience is that it may start in 5th or 6th grade, right? So you got to be particularly careful about what your kindergartners are learning.
Well, and one of my favorite things about the whole parental consent argument is the fact that one of our esteemed House of Delegates members here in Northern Virginia fought for a law demanding that consent education be taught in family life, and it was passed and signed into law. So you have a situation where your children are going to be taught consent. Your children are going to be taught to consent to sex, by the way, but they're doing it without the consent of the parent, right? Because they assume I say yes, as long as I don't say no, which I hope would not be their standard for a sexual encounter, right? But this is what they're teaching them in school, that it's okay for them to talk to my kids about sex as long as I don't say no. I sent them through the schoolhouse door, and so my consent is assumed simply because my child is present there. But then they're teaching a whole different lesson, I hope, in the class. Rank hypocrisy.
We got some questions.
Yeah, Josh, can we take a couple of questions from the tables?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think I can bring this to you anyway.
I can't pick.
No,
I wanted to ask our speakers if they could describe what was the nature of the change from the previous curriculum in family life education to that is now in effect.
I would say that when you order a curriculum around marriage, right, and preparing children to hopefully enter into a marital relationship with a spouse, and then you redefine marriage to include maybe 2 women married or 2 men married, then the sorts of relations that would happen in those situations are now also required to be included in the curriculum.
I'm going to take it. I'll take it back up a notch from that. If you actually read Virginia Code about what the reason why they instituted family life education in schools, what Virginia Code says is actually very reasonable. It's, it is actually about family, it is about life, and it is about education. And the predominant structure of family life education as guided by Virginia Code is to support marriage and to teach children abstinence. And that there's a value to family, and there's a value to abstinence, and that basically, the state, if Fairfax County actually taught the State Board of Education family life curriculum, I'd probably let my kids take it. It's very family friendly. It's like, look, you know what? Within the context of marriage, that's where, what happens in your bedroom, I don't really care, but what I do care about is the hypersexualization of our curriculum to children. And, we got God out of schools, but, we substituted sex. And it's unfortunate because this is a huge problem. In one K-12 cohort, in one 18-year period, you've had a multi-1,000% increase in suicide in young people between the ages of 5 and 25. I pulled these statistics for previous superintendents. Mental health and wellness is a major, major problem because everybody, we teach children that this is a phone because parents want to contact their kids. And it's not, it's a supercomputer, and every image, and not just images in action of every possible thing. And I say every CEO, every world leader, every terrorist, and every porn producer in the world has the exact same thing. And when my children range in age from, my oldest is 24, college graduate. I have a senior in college who's 21. I have a freshman in college who's 18. But I also have an 11-year-old who's in elementary school. The change from just in my own children to what is accessed and what is available, and the age at which parents are willing to put this in the hands of their children, this is invading the curriculum. For every engineer who's on this side of the screen driving your child to information here, to say, this is good, this is okay, this is, whatever conduct, whatever behavior, whatever, anything is okay, your kid is being drawn in, your grandkid is being drawn, your niece, your nephew is being drawn in.
Excuse me, ladies, I want to go on with the program.
Sure.
Please.
So I have a question, but this is not a school board problem.
It is.
This is a parent problem. If we're parents are handing these over to our kids, that's a family problem.
But school boards could step in and say, have some direction. They could say to the parent community, this is interfering with the education of children. This is drawing in hyper sexualized images to young children. We're not going to do this we're not going to have these as a part of, their school day. And it's a very difficult conversation that needs to happen.
But doesn't it happen so then the school board can say, my kids go to Catholic school,
Yeah.
and they can say, well, you can't have this in the school, okay?
Right.
So then you take it away from them, and then the mom and dad are running and saying, I want my kids to come back.
You're right.
You know what I mean? So
It is a parent problem too.
Yeah, it's a big parent problem, because
What
there's
we're
one of your
hoping
buying
to
posts
learn from
handing
you
Mhm.
is not what is available on a supercomputer,
Right.
but what is part of the curriculum being taught in the classroom as a result of policy changes.
Let me point out two things that I came across in the curriculum. These are just objectives that they list out. Again, it's more than a lot of counties do. And you can go online and read them yourself. Two things to consider as things that we ought to be looking out for those. In 5th grade, one of them is students will identify messages in mass media related to gender stereotyping. All right, so it sounds kind of innocuous, but with the transgender ideology, what does it really mean? It says students will understand how the media affects mental health, issues related to sexuality. Students examine messages about sex roles and gender in the media, including printed materials, on and on. And then there's another objective right beneath that. It says students will define will define child abuse and neglect and identify adults in whom they can confide and trust to help them. Now, of course, this is a very important thing, and I think the graders perhaps should be taught this. But there again, as a matter of parental authority, what's being taught about what is child abuse, and is this suddenly gonna create situations in which children are saying things that they don't really understand, and it's causing the Department of Social Services to get involved, maybe unnecessarily. They're hard questions, but it's just things that, it'd be worth following up on.
And who's a trusted adult? That was a big fight in Fairfax because the school board attempted to remove a pastor as a trusted adult. And that was the one thing that we eked back up, is that you couldn't have a religious leader deemed to be a trusted adult. I mean, it was shocking.
Yeah, I would say that what the problem, what is so over the top about the sex ed in Fairfax is that it doesn't simply teach children how their bodies work, right? Because kids going through puberty need to know that, and if parents are not going to take that responsibility seriously, it's not totally inappropriate for the school to do that. Okay, it's not just that. It's not just how are babies made. That's in biology in 9th grade. There's a lot of talk about different kinds of reproduction, including human reproduction, and that's completely appropriate in that setting, right? The difference is that they go from teaching what sex is to how to have sex, and how to have a lot of different kinds of sex that maybe most parents and grandparents would be surprised to learn is actually something that is being talked about in school. And that's the question.
And I also think that the role of boys in society, boys are at risk. Fewer boys are going to college, fewer boys are being successful in college, fewer boys are getting graduate degrees, and yet the curriculum that was presented to us last week specifically said in the rewrite of the history curriculum that they're going to ensure in every classroom that each lesson is taught with an objective to teach children about the perspective through people of color and women. And we're ignoring half the population. And what does that do in terms of driving these culture changes bit by bit? If you deminimize to boys that you even have a role in society as a part of history, what you're doing is you're emasculating all the men, saying, well, we don't have to talk about you. You are not important. I say this as a mother of 4 boys too, and I said it to the school board, that I'm offended that you're saying we don't have to learn about things from the perspective of boys and men, because they don't matter anymore.
Right. In the FLA curriculum, the perspective of a caring father, all those dads with their clipboards and whistles at the soccer games, all the wonderful things that men do for their children, is not very well characterized in the FLA curriculum at all. So it's a lost opportunity.
I'm going to take a couple questions. I saw yours first, and then